Welcome to the UPoker Academy Poker Lecture Series designed to make you a better poker player. This is a lesson in our shorthanded curriculum. Right now we're sitting at a three-handed table. We've got two players at the table. Bardowin we have never played before, but B. Harris we've been playing heads up for some time, and we do have some relatively good reads on him. So I'm going to walk you through those reads and talk about how they change when there's a third person involved, and hopefully we'll get two or three more players to sit at the table and have a really interesting dynamic develop. So to start with, we're going to play a relatively aggressive strategy against B. Harris, but Bardowin will throw some variation into the mix. So what would be a good opponent type for Bardowin to be? Ideally, he'll be weak tight, he'll stay out of pots. That would allow us to resume our heads-up game with B. Harris relatively unimpeded. It might also help if Bardowin is a calling station, because we are, just to explain, we're looking to play small pot poker against B. Harris in hands when we don't have much of a hand, and we're looking to play big pot poker against him when we flop top pair or better, because he does call down pretty lightly with things like middle pair or top pair with a weak kicker. So if Bardowin was a weak type player, then he would be effectively bluffed out of the hands where we're also trying to bluff B. Harris. But if he's a calling station, then that makes our big pot hands even more valuable. So the first step is going to be to determine which type of player Bardowin is. So we are going to raise a little bit bigger than a normal raise, and then bet a little bit larger than a normal bet on the flop. This will allow us to see what hands he calls large raises with. If he does call them with weak hands, both of those bets, we can assume that he doesn't really understand how to avoid building big pots, and he's going to allow us to build those pots at our leisure. So with the ace-6 offsuit, it's a clear call to a min raise, but it doesn't leave us a lot of opportunities to dictate the pace of this hand. So we are looking to flop a good hand, and when we don't flop a hand, we're looking to get out of the way. So I don't think B. Harris has the 10 here because he hasn't bet yet. He normally does bet when he has a hand. He could have a weaker hand like a 7, a 5, or a 3. But I think it's going to be worth a call here because I'm not confident he has a pair. And we do call and take it down with ace high. So that's just basic hand reading. We know that if he had a 10, he would have bet before that point. Most likely he would have bet any pair on the flops. That means if he hit the 7, we're going to be losing there, or if he played his hand really strangely, we're going to be losing there. Most of the time, we're going to be ahead. So here we do have a reasonably strong hand with a flush draw and the gut shot. And it does get checked around, which indicates that nobody has much of anything. So we're going to bet out here as a semi-bluff, given that we have 12 outs. We only have to have the semi-bluff work somewhere around 10% of the time. So with ace-jack on the button, it's a clear raise. We're going to raise about 3 times the big blind and hopefully get heads up with B. Harris. And we do get to play against both players. And we flop a great hand. We've got the gut shot, the open-ended straight draw to the nuts with the king. And we are going to make a large bet here as a combination semi-bluff and value bet, because there's no indication that anybody has anything better than an ace yet. This will be a great opportunity to see in action how these players play against large bets. And if Bardowin does call with something like a 9 here, we know that he is vulnerable to big pot play. He did not call, so we don't really have any reads on him yet, which is unfortunate, but we did take the pot down pretty easily. Queen 5 is a really weak hand, but we are getting 6 to 1 on our money, so it's going to be a clear call just on the math alone. So not much to do here. It was limped on the button, which indicates a drawing type hand. A lot of players will limp drawing hands. And we've got Queen 10, which plays well in both drawy pots and as a top pair hand. So we are happy just to check it and see what we can make out of it after the flop. With the 6-5, it's going to be an easy raise. Given that we want to play big pots, we want to hit something like a straight or 2 pair with a hand that's very disguised, and 6-5 fits the bill perfectly. On the 7-7 jack flop, against 2 players, it is going to be a c-bet if it's checked around to us. In this case, it is not. B Harris donks out and it is called, and while we might decide with something like a jack here to play just against B Harris, the fact is that Bardawin calling indicates that there are some strong hands out there. Interesting call by Bardawin. With the king high on a board like that, that says to me that he is also going to be vulnerable in big pots. That is a very, very weak call, both on the flop and on the river. Again, with the 2-10 getting 6-1 on our money, there's no question about a call there. So the interesting thing about three-handed poker is that you're often playing heads up against one opponent. And this happens in all short-handed poker. One of the reasons that people like short-handed is because you play fewer multi-way pots, but when you get up to 5 or 6 players, you often do end up playing multi-way pots. So I actually prefer a 4-player game would be my ideal, but I'm not averse to playing three-handed games as well. So here we see a min raise from out of position, which is just a silly play. So we are just going to call and see what happens on the flop. And it's a good sign to give up when he c-bets there. Then 7 suited plays great in a big pot situation if it flops the right cards. So we are going to make a raise here. Worth noting is the disparity in stack sizes against, between Bardawin and B Harris. B Harris is our target because he's got enough money to cover us, so we can actually get our value out of him. Because Bardawin is such a short stack, we actually don't care too much whether he's involved in the pot or not. Here he has taken away our ability to c-bet with a very weak play. Unfortunately, against Bardawin, who is known to call very weakly, there's not much we can do about that. So against the 2x raise here, that might be a call. Against the 3x, it's going to be a fold because we're no longer getting 6 to 1 on our money. We were getting 2 to 9, or about 1 to 4, 1 to 5. So it's a little bit harder to call with weak hands when you are only putting in 25% of the pot. A hand like 7-2 against 2 good hands is probably more like 10% to win. So it's a lot closer to a losing play. Three jack's not a great hand, but it is still going to be a raise. Given that we have such good reads on our players now. Little hiccup there. 3 jack's going to be a raise. We've got great reads on our players and we know how to play. So we are going to raise 3 jack, and in this case we opted not to c-bet because we have the 3, but we don't have, it's a very drawy board and we didn't want to build a big pot. And we know that Bardowin is a pretty loose caller, so we opted not to c-bet here. It looks like it's come back to bite us as he did bet the turn and we're not able to call. Ideally what we would have seen is him checking the turn and we would c-bet on the turn. It's a delayed c-bet and it works well in some situations. So what would we consider a success at this game? I think if we were to stack B. Harris with a strong hand, that would be a success. And I think another success might be if we were to chip away at one or both players with small pot c-bets and slowly grow to be the big stack. I'm happy with either of those. Here I'm going to go for the big pot alternative. We've got a strong hand with the 10-9 suited, so we are going to make a raise and hopefully isolate B. Harris, and we do. And we are obliged to c-bet any flop when we make a raise like that. And as we know, B. Harris tends to call when he has hands and fold when he does not. Nine-4, relatively weak hand. Nonetheless, if we do isolate B. Harris, we can chip away at him. This might actually be a bad pot to c-bet with a flop this wet and 2 players involved. I don't think our c-bet's going to work often enough to be profitable here. Now that it has been bet by Bardowin, we are just going to fold. It looks like Bardowin's trying to build a big pot. He has bet twice now. He actually didn't bet enough on the turn. It would have been nice if he had enough to put an all-in bet in here on the river. And he does call and he shows down, eesh, just a bottom pair. Bardowin's a relatively weak player. This is the second time we've seen him show down very, very weak hands. So I would say big pot poker is going to be effective against both these opponents. So with the ace in position against Bardowin, it's going to be a clear raise. And I'm actually going to start getting a little bit more aggressive. Maybe not in this position because we do have such a weak hand, but I think it's going to have some value if we do start building these pots a little bit better pre-flop, instead of just letting it limp around so often. And with the bottom pair, we are going to call and hope to hit something like this. And we do. That 4 looks innocuous enough that we are just going to check again and see if we can't get somebody else to make our raises for us. And we do. The board is relatively dry, but we do have a hand that's easily counterfeited. So it's important to put in our raise here and either take it down or stack a player. See, if a king or a jack came, then our hand would be counterfeited. Any pair would have a better 2 pair than we had. Well, this would normally not be a raise, but we have such good reads on B. Harris at this point that any 2 cards above 8 will probably be raises from either positions. So we did flop top pair. It's a relatively tame board. We don't expect to be behind here, so we are going to bet and see if we can't get him to call down with a weaker 7, or with a draw, or with just a deuce, which he very well could. So 2 jacks are going to be a fantastic hand to play against these players. We are most likely going to be headed the whole way. If they do catch a pair, they'll probably have a weaker pair than jacks because they are playing low cards. So we're going to make a raise here and hope to get it heads up with one of these players. So we were successful at that, but we get probably the worst flop for jacks that we could have gotten. Fortunately, Bardawin does call with hands that don't pair anything on the flop. So we do have an option to c-bet, and if he calls, know that we may still be ahead. So King 3's not the strongest hand, but against these 2 players with our reads, it is worth a raise, as we will have a pretty good idea how to play it after the flop. And we do fold out the player who has position on us, and if Bardawin does opt to call, we will have position on him, which is a fantastic opportunity to play heads up against a weak player. Now we can probably get away with calling 2 more with a 7-5 suited against Bardawin, especially because B. Harris is most likely going to come in on this. He doesn't, so we are heads up, which is a great spot to be in, and we flop a monster. We've got the gut shot, we've got the flush draw, we've got the 2 pair opportunities, and we already have a pair. So this is going to be a sizable raise, and we hope to get it all in on the flop. He does call, so we have no option but to go on and bet the turn. He does have an overpair, but nonetheless, we still did get our money in good there. With all the outs that we had against his overpair, from the flush to the straight to the 2 pair opportunities, we had more than 50% to win the pot. So the suited king queen's a great hand here. Makes lots of top pairs and better. Here we do make a top pair. And a good enough top pair that we believe that if we do get calls, we are going to be ahead. We're going to try to extract the maximum amount that we can with the hand. We do that by betting large on the flop and turn, and then value betting on the river depending on how the board turns out. So we'll call the $1 to see the flop with Jack 4, and we do flop top pair. We are going to check it through. We'd like to see B here as C-bet and see what Bardowin does. And the 2 is actually a good card for us. It makes our kicker not matter so much, because now we're splitting with Jacks better than 4 instead of losing to them. Now we're certain we have the best hand. The likelihood of somebody having a 2 here, very unlikely. And it does get overbet. We are going to call. We expect to see either a Jack or a 10 here. We see a 10 and we do take down a sizable pot simply because Bardowin is a moron. So we flop the top pair and the straight draw, or sorry, the middle pair and the straight draw, which gives us a reasonably good hand. And so leading out's the right play here. And the 2 doesn't impact our hand at all, so we are going to continue to bet. We might end up seeing someone show down an 8 here, but we're just as likely to see someone show down a 6. That's tricky. We've seen Bardowin make this mistake with lots of hands. It's 10 to win 40, which is 1 to 4 odds. We're almost getting that simply on our straight draw alone. We're getting 1 to 8, or sorry, 1 to 12, and then add the value of our 2 pair hands. We're getting 1 to 6 or so, and with implied odds and the fact that we could be ahead, I think that's a clear turn call. Now we're being put to a decision. The interesting thing is Bardowin did not raise the flop, but he did raise the turn. We need to be winning here, 1 out of 4 times. So 10% of the time, at least he's got a bluff. Given what we know about this opponent, it probably is 20% of the time. That means we're winning 20% of the time. We need to win 25% of the time. If 5% of the time he has a hand that is not a bluff but is weaker than a 7, this is a call. It's tough. It's very close. I think it's going to be a call just given the weakness we've seen him play with before. And he does have a monster with the flop straight, and he's allowed to catch good hands. I still stand by my call there, simply based on the math. So the hand's going to be playing 3 ways. In a 3-way pot, this is going to be one of the flops we do not see bet because it is such a drawy board. But given that we're getting 11 to 1 on our call, we have to call there on the chance we catch the queen, which we do. This is going to be a place where we're going to have to put in a raise. We have top pair, the board's very dry. B. Harris most likely has a pair with some kind of a draw. Bardawin if he calls here, and he doesn't, so we won't even entertain that. So that didn't improve any draws. So we still put him on a pair with a draw, so now he's just got a pair. That makes it a good value bet, so we're going to bet about half pot and expect him to show down something like Jack 8. Maybe Jack 10. Or Jack with a random spade, or the Jack of spades. We do expect a call here from a hand like that. He does have the Queen Jack, which makes that an incredible monster that we did not see. Completely misplayed. He should have re-raised that turn with that hand. So flopping the bottom pair against Bardawin, probably not something we're going to like playing. Need to have strong hands to really start betting against him. So it's a good spot to check it down. This is going to be a good spot for a raise. We want to build a pot with hands like these. And we do get the pot that we requested, and we do flop second pair. Most likely gives us a lead here, but we'll have to see given how far these players are willing to go with their hands. It's tricky because either one of them could have had an ace and not raised it. At this point, I don't think there's any value to a bet, but there might be value to a check. If he bets, we are going to call. And he did bet very little. He does have a weak ace. So again, we get coolered. Not the end of the world. Let's just jam this and pick up the 2 big blinds in the pot. So we're going to rebuy here. The reason we did jam there, we are short stacked. There are 2 big blinds in the pot. The chance of them calling compared to the chance that we actually win sometimes makes that a good all-in position. Probably better than trying to play a big pot hand with a very short stack. So it didn't work out this time, but it is it's common sit and go strategy. With 2 10s, it's going to be a re-raise, and we are going to try to stack one of these with these players. Great flop for us. The jacks, because there's 2 of them, means it's less likely that somebody has one. But the 9 is a hand that most players will play to the river. So what he's asking right now is, does he have the jack? Does he have the jack? We don't have the jack, and he's thinking, does he have the 9? Does he have the 9? We don't have the 9. That makes our hand a really strong hand on that flop, because against something like ace 9, they're going to think they've got a pretty good opportunity. Second pair here, there's no reason to think anybody has the ace. We're going to go in and bet, take the pot down. Six, 5, great big pot hand, just what we're looking for. Going to raise this. flop the straight draw, the weak straight draw, but it is a paired board, which means players are less likely to have anything on the board. Bardowin does lead out. That takes our c-bet advantage away from us, but it gives us perfect odds to call and hope to hit the straight. We do hit the straight. We are going to play for stacks here. He's bet 5. We need to get about 18 in the pot so that we can go all in on the river. And he is going to let us get it all in here. We do expect to see an 8. And there's the 8, and we do take it down with the straight. Heads up, I'll often bet out at flops like this. In a three-handed game, you've got to bluff off 2 players. Might not always be the best time to make these bets. Looks like we are just going to check it down. Our queen does have some showdown value, so there's no reason to bluff at the river here. Strong ace. It's going to be a re-raise. So even with a weak hand like 5-3, I feel that because of our positional advantage and our advantage in reads, we have a great spot to flop a straight or 2-pair and make a lot of money off these players. So we can make these raises so long as we have a game plan going forward, and we do have one here with a raise. So we're going to raise. We have to c-bet this flop because we did flop a pair. And we easily take it down. So against Bardowin, we are going to raise the king. We are in position. Pretty dry flop. I haven't seen enough hands where he showed down after a donk bet to make any reasonable reads on what he might have there. So we've got 2 kings. This can be a difficult hand to play out of position against B. Harris. So we are going to make a sizable raise. And hopefully if B. Harris calls, we can figure out how to play it from there on out. Ideally we would stack Bardowin. Alright, B. Harris is going to call. If Bardowin also calls, then we have the right size pot that we need, and we are going to bet 3 streets for value. Again, a relatively dry flop. Worth a c-bet. Given that he called here, we're probably going to need to pick up a card to win. Most likely called with an 8 or a 6 there. His 6 was just counterfeited, which puts us in an interesting spot if he does bet. Does he have the ace? Does he have the 8? Or does he have the 6? Well, on the flop, a third of the time he has the ace, 8, and 6. Now that the ace and the 8 have come out again, he's a little bit less likely to have those. But I'm not sure he would jam like this with the 6, so we're just going to go on and fold there. But definitely worth thinking about whether or not our jack high is good, given that his 6 might have been counterfeited. King jack here facing a raise. Could be a re-raise, could be a call. Actually, I think it's going to be a clear re-raise, and we'll just jam on him. Sometimes he'll have us beat, sometimes he'll be behind. This time, he's got us beat, and he does catch the flush. So the reason we opted to re-raise there was because his stack is so short, and his raise is so small, that you see him fold often enough to make a profit there, and the other times you just flip for it. I'm going to raise the ace-4. We've got a pretty good idea how these guys are playing now. I'm confident that if I can catch the right hand, I'm going to stack them both. So it looks like the game is filling up. 2 calls on the flop means that somebody's got us beat for sure. Hopefully they will check it around and we can catch that ace on the river. But not in this case. So just like that, the game has gone from 3-handed to 5-handed. We've got 2 players who we've never played with before. And we're going to have to see how they will interfere with the strategy we've so delicately created. It looks like we will go to 6-handed. So here we're going to raise to isolate. Ideally we get a heads up with Bard Owen. But I'm also okay with a big pre-flop hand with pocket 9s because it is such a strong hand. And we do get a great flop. The ace could be out there, but there's no. It's not like we got 3 overcards to our 9s, which is about the best we can hope for. It's unlikely that anybody played a 2. So who worries me here? Bard Owen, not so much. B. Harris, he could have potentially played an ace like this. And CR2X's donk bet, highly suspect. I don't understand why he wouldn't have just waited for me to bet. I'm going to go in and put it in against him. And B. Harris, actually this might have been a mistake because B. Harris could still have the ace. That might have been a clear fold. He does have the 4-3 and we do win. But his play there didn't indicate an ace to me. With an ace he didn't have anything to fear. Seemed like his best play would have been to check. But you always have to be wary of the players who have not yet acted, and it seems like that might have been an oversight on my part to raise against a big stack who had not yet acted and could very well have the ace. So this video is running on a little long. I think this is going to be a good spot to end it. Given that we have so many players in now, this has kind of evolved from what it was supposed to be, which was a three-handed video where we talk about exploiting a couple of players. It's going to change into a different video at this point. I think this is a good place to end this particular one. So thank you for joining us at UPoker Academy. Please check us out on riskoriented.com. For more poker strategy delivered directly to your YouTube account, please like us and subscribe to us. And for more poker strategy right now, continue on to our next poker lecture by clicking here.